Why had they asked her to come at all if they wouldn't listen? She stood at the edge of the briefing table hours earlier, silent while the men debated water supply, extraction times, angles of march. Every calculation was precise, every word clipped with military certainty. But not once did they look to her except when they needed the sniper's math, distances, wind speed, kill probability. That was when eyes turned. And when she gave the numbers clean and sharp, the room grew quiet. Then it passed. She was invisible again. But now, with the desert burning every thought into ash, invisibility was no longer a luxury. The heat shimmer bent the horizon into something unreal, like water that never came. She had been in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in places where sand carried secrets and every mirage felt like a trick. Yet here, southwestern American soil, something pressed heavier. This was supposed to be training, final day pressure test, nothing more. That's what command had told them. No civilians for 50 miles in any direction. No roads. No way out except the coordinates where helicopters would touch down at dusk. She adjusted the strap across her shoulder and scanned the dunes. Shadows fell long, sharp, and shifting, perfect places to hide the one thing no team wanted to meet in the open: another sniper. The men trudged in their practiced formation, 8 of them, sweat soaking through gear that felt twice as heavy now. Each step crunched against grains that whispered underfoot like brittle glass. They were strong, elite, tested by years of pain and trial. She knew their kind. She was one of them, though they never truly let her forget that she wasn't like them, not in the way they saw it. The desert punished equality. Marcus Thompson, grizzled veteran of 3 wars, led them steady, his presence more than his words. Rodriguez, their sniper, older, sharp-eyed, moved with predatory caution. The others, machine gunners, comms, medic, demolitions, followed the rhythm beaten into their bodies by training and trust. She was the shadow inside their shadow, brought in, not fully belonging. A test, perhaps, or a quiet experiment no one admitted aloud. The silence pressed heavier than the sun. It made her heart loud in her ears, her own breathing like thunder. She remembered nights as a child when silence had felt like a punishment, after arguments in the house, after slammed doors, after voices stopped. The kind of silence that made a young girl want to scream just to prove she was still alive. That memory came back uninvited now. She blinked it away. Ahead, the desert stretched endless. Behind, nothing but footsteps that the wind erased as quickly as they fell. Nothing lasted here except bones. She whispered the thought to herself, bones or memory. And then it happened. The crack of a rifle cut the world in half. Not a pop, not a warning, a crack that ripped the silence into ribbons. Someone screamed, too young, too sudden. Morrison, the rookie, dropped forward, rifle falling from his hands. His uniform blossomed crimson at the chest. She knew instantly it wasn't paint, wasn't simulation. Real blood spread fast in the dry heat. Her body reacted before her mind allowed the truth. She dropped low, scope up, sweeping, searching for the phantom that had fired. Nothing. Just sand, stone, heat shimmer. Her pulse roared. Contact, Thompson barked. Training snapped into motion. Men dove to ground, weapons fanned across the arc of desert. But where? Where? She pressed her eye into the glass of her scope. A sniper knows when something doesn't fit, the angles, the drop, the light. Morrison's wound was high right chest, an angle that suggested north, elevated. She scanned ridges, rocks, the wavering distance. Nothing but lies painted by the sun. Her gut twisted. Whoever it was, they hadn't fired blind. That was professional, that was patience. That was her language. And she realized they weren't just a target, they were prey. The medic crawled to Morrison, hands steady even as his voice trembled. Through and through, but bleeding heavy. Stay with me, kid. The rookie's eyes were wide, confusion flickering like he hadn't processed the universe had shifted under him. She wanted to speak, wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that sometimes you can be perfect and still fall. But her throat closed. Positions, eyes north. Thompson's voice was gravel, yet every scan, every search came up empty. The desert stared back with indifference. She lowered her rifle for half a second, just enough to breathe. Something in her chest tightened, memory again, the one she hated. Years ago, in another land, she had lain just like this, waiting, scanning, knowing there was a scope trained on her too. She had survived that day. Others hadn't. And she carried their ghosts in silence. This moment smelled the same, a predator unseen. Chen, the comms man, cursed under his breath as static ate his transmission. He tried again, flipping through frequencies. Nothing. Jammed. Deliberate. Her stomach sank lower. Training exercise. No, this wasn't accident. Someone was here with resources, with skill, with intent. The medic's voice broke in sharp. I need a vac. He'll crash in hours without it. But no answer came. Just the static of an empty sky. She wiped sweat from her eyes, grit stinging raw skin. She steadied the scope again, scanning slower, forcing her sniper's discipline. Patterns, disruptions, disturbances too subtle for most to notice. That was how you hunted ghosts. Rodriguez was scanning too, his jaw set like stone. For a moment their eyes met across the formation, sniper to sniper. No words needed. Both knew the truth. A professional had them. Her heart picked up pace, but not fear. Focus. It was the feeling before pulling a trigger, before committing to something irreversible. Morrison gasped, I don't want to die here. His words cut sharper than the rifle's crack. For a second the desert was gone. She was back in a small room, holding her brother's hand before he shipped off. He had said the same thing. Only he hadn't come home. Her hand clenched on the rifle. No one else would fall if she could help it. The desert wind shifted, carrying the faintest echo. Not sound, not movement, just a change. She felt it more than heard it. She tracked along the northern ridge. Heat shimmer danced. A flicker, was it glass, a scope, or just a mirage mocking her? She froze, breath shallow. She didn't take the shot, not yet. A sniper doesn't fire on ghosts. A sniper waits. Movement, she whispered into the calm. Her voice cracked dry, but it carried weight. The team stilled. All eyes turned where she aimed. The desert gave nothing back. Time stretched thin, stretched cruel. Seconds were hours. Sweat carved trails down her face. The sun burned with the fury of a god. And still nothing. But the rookie was bleeding. The men were unraveling. Thompson's jaw tightened, his next decision hanging heavy. Stay or move, wait or risk. Neither answer clean. She pressed her cheek harder against the stock. Her finger found the trigger guard, resting. Not yet. Because something told her this wasn't random. This wasn't about them failing training. This was personal, designed, chosen. And what chilled her more than the unseen barrel aimed at them was this thought. Someone here knew their playbook. Every drill, every doctrine, every choice before it was made. The silence closed in again, thicker than before. The desert was patient. The sniper was patient. She had to be more. Her heartbeat slowed by force of will. She whispered into herself, words no one else could hear. Not again, not this time, not on my watch. Why did the silence feel louder than the gunshot? The rookie's breathing rasped through the comms, shallow and wet. Every man knew the sound. A chest wound, blood in the lungs. A countdown no one could stop, only delay. The medic's hands pressed fast, efficient, yet he couldn't change the truth. Morrison was alive now, but time was a predator. The team spread across the ridge like shadows clinging to sand. Their weapons pointed at nothing. No muzzle flash, no figure, no dust plume, just emptiness. A battlefield with only one side visible. She stayed prone, cheek welded to the rifle, scope sweeping north to northwest. Each rock, each ridge, each mirage became a suspect. She slowed her breathing, counting the seconds, waiting for the smallest disruption. That's how you found them. Snipers betrayed themselves not by what they showed, but by what the landscape failed to hide. Still nothing. Status, Thompson's voice was controlled steel. Bleeding heavy. Stable for now, Foster grunted, voice tight. Communications. Dead, Chen snapped, smacking his handset as if force could push signal through the air. It's not interference. It's targeted. Someone's jamming. Thompson's jaw flexed, his silence an answer all its own. She shifted slightly, eyes catching a ripple in the sand 700 meters out. Too small for a man, could be wind, could be trick of light, but it tightened her chest anyway. She whispered into comms, Northwest Ridge, 700 out, possible disturbance. Rodriguez was already scanning the same sector. His whisper carried weight. If he's there, he's not alone. Angles don't add up. Her gut twisted. Multiple shooters, or one who knew how to dance the desert's illusions. Morrison coughed, blood flecking his lips. He reached for her with a hand slick in red. Tell me, am I gonna make it? She froze. A sniper's job wasn't comfort, it was distance, detachment, cold calculation. But his eyes, young, raw, terrified, demanded something more human. She lowered her rifle just enough to meet his gaze. You're not dying here, she said, voice flat but steady. Not today. It wasn't a promise she could keep, but it was the only thing he needed. The desert wind carried a whisper, a shift of dust. She jerked her scope back north. Nothing but rock and heat shimmer, yet her instincts screamed. Rodriguez's voice cut through. This isn't random. Whoever's out there knows doctrine, knows our roots. She knew it too. Every movement they made, every fallback drill, every decision, they were anticipated, like someone reading the playbook as they acted it out. Her finger itched against the trigger. Not yet, not until the ghost showed himself. Thompson signaled with his hand. Move. Staggered advance toward extraction. Staying meant waiting for death. Moving meant gambling on angles, concealment, time. The formation shifted. Parker's machine gun scanned arcs, Garcia covering rear, Rodriguez and her alternating scopes on the northern ridge. The medic dragged Morrison with Williams covering close. Every step forward felt stolen. She kept low, eyes behind glass, heart forcing calm. The desert was a chessboard and they were pawns on the wrong color. Another thought struck her, sharp, cold. The shot on Morrison hadn't been fatal. A professional sniper could have ended him. Center mass, headshot, easy, but the bullet had spared, deliberately. She whispered what she hated to admit. It wasn't meant to kill, it was meant to slow us. Rodriguez's silence confirmed he'd come to the same conclusion. That changed everything. This wasn't about elimination, it was about control. Someone wanted them here, bleeding, desperate, exposed. Why? Her throat tightened. She remembered another mission, years ago, when her unit had been drawn into a canyon by staged fire. 2 days later, half were dead. The rest carried scars never spoken of aloud. She had sworn then never to walk blind into another trap. And yet here she was. The sun sank lower, shadows sharpening across the desert. Each stretch of open sand looked like a killing field. Each rock formation like a barrel pointing their way. Parker muttered low, "This ain't no drill." No one disagreed. Her scope tracked left, then right. Movement flickered again. Not a figure, not clear. Just a shift of light off glass, brief, gone. Too neat to be accidental, too careless to be true. Decoy, she breathed. Rodriguez cursed softly. He's baiting, wants us to fire. She pulled her cheek back from the stock, closing her eyes for a heartbeat. That same memory again, another desert, another day she'd hesitated. Back then, her hesitation had saved them, but hesitation could also kill. Which would it be now? Her fingers trembled, not from fear but from memory. She hated that. The ghosts had followed her here, to this desert that wasn't supposed to carry war. "Ma'am," William's voice crackled in her ear. Young, scared, but steady. "What if there's more than one?" She opened her eyes, looking at the boy dragging Morrison, sweat and fear soaking him. 19. Too young to carry that question. She wanted to tell him the truth, that sometimes there were many and sometimes there was only one, but either way, survival didn't come from counting. It came from refusing to stop. Instead, she said, then we fight smarter. Her scope came back up. A line of sand twisted unnaturally near a washout, tire tracks, fresh. Whoever was out there hadn't walked in. They had driven, with gear, with planning, with time. This wasn't random, this was staged. Thompson's voice came over, low, heavy. We're not facing trainees, not even irregulars, this is pro. Rodriguez added what no one wanted to say, American pro. The words landed like a hammer. She felt it in her stomach. She knew the shape of the camouflage, the discipline of the shot, the precision of the jamming. She learned it, lived it, taught it. And now someone was using it against them. Her mouth went dry. Was it betrayal, rogue unit, or something darker, authorized, sanctioned, hidden? The questions twisted like knives, but she shoved them aside. First survive, then ask. She adjusted her sights again. The rookie groaned. The medic pressed harder, whispering encouragements he probably didn't believe. Her voice came soft into the comms. He's hurting us, toward extraction, toward open ground. Thompson's silence was agreement. Every instinct screamed to break pattern, scatter, confuse. But with Morrison down, scattering meant leaving him. And leaving him was a choice none of them could live with. So they pushed forward. Each meter was war, sand crushed under boots, sweat blurred vision, guns swept arcs of emptiness. The desert was patient, the sniper was patient, and patience always killed. She thought of her brother again. The last letter he had written, words smudged by rain on paper, stay alive. Even if you have to stay silent, stay alive. She wondered if he'd forgive her, out here, walking straight into someone else's trap. The sun dropped lower, shadows grew teeth, and somewhere out there in the dunes, another rifle waited for its second chance. Why did every step feel like walking into crosshairs? The desert stretched endless yet claustrophobic. Each grain of sand carried weight. The rookie's ragged breathing filled the silence, carried by comms like a ticking clock. Foster kept pressure on the wound, whispering lies meant to sound like promises. You're fine. You're not going anywhere. You're strong. Lies necessary for survival. The team's formation crawled forward. Cover was laughable, shadows barely deep enough for a man to hide behind, rocks too small to matter against a bullet flying faster than sound. And yet they moved, because stopping meant waiting for another crack to split the silence. She lay prone again, rifle steady, scope sweeping. Her lips were dry, cracked, tasting copper from where she'd bitten too hard. She tracked ridges, washes, tricking herself into believing she saw movement. But every time she blinked, the shape was gone. Then something cut different. A glint, not long, not strong, just a shard of light bouncing from glass. Reflex pushed her finger near the trigger, but she froze. Too easy. If there was a shooter that skilled, why reveal himself? She whispered into comms. Reflection at 900, feels staged. Rodriguez answered like gravel grinding stone. Agreed. Could be decoy. Could be him knowing we'd second guess. The truth of sniping, it wasn't about shots. It was about psychology. Patience was the weapon. Fear was the bullet. And fear was cutting deep now. Williams dragged Morrison inch by inch, his shoulders shaking with effort. Sweat poured down his young face, stinging his eyes. She saw the boy's lips moving, silent prayers maybe, or curses, or just anything to keep going. Her chest ached. He reminded her of herself, years younger, desperate to prove something to men who would never fully see her. Carrying weight too heavy, trying to look unbreakable when the cracks were already showing. She wanted to say something, but her throat locked. Sometimes silence was the only language the battlefield accepted. Water, Garcia muttered over comms, his breath ragged. They rationed to last. But the desert was greedy. Sweat stole what discipline preserved, and now stress burned through reserves twice as fast. Parker's voice came, low but firm. Save it, rookie needs it more. The words silenced everyone. Sacrifice spoken so casually. That was how soldiers gave pieces of themselves without ceremony. Then the second crack split the world. Sand kicked inches from William's boot. The boy froze, eyes wide, heart hammering in his throat. Another shot, this one aimed low, deliberate, not a kill, a warning. She rolled hard, sight whipping to the northwest ridge. Muzzle flashed tiny, brief, betrayed itself in the fading light. She drew breath, steadied her hand, calculations snapping in place. Distance, wind, drop. A perfect shot ready. But before she pulled, another flash erupted farther left. Second position, 2 shooters. Her heart seized. Rodriguez's voice snapped, 2 confirmed. Her scope tracked between them, too far apart to be one man. 2 rifles, same discipline, both waiting, both controlling. The team dove into what little cover sand offered, Parker and Garcia laying suppressive arcs, blind fire across dunes, machine guns roaring thunder without visible targets. The desert spat back silence. She held her breath, watching through her scope. One figure shifted, a shadow crawling along stone. She squeezed. Shot broke. Dust puffed near target, but the figure melted back into rock. Miss. Her stomach sank. Snipers weren't allowed misses. Misses meant exposure, meant revealing position, meant weakness. Rodriguez fired a half-second after her. His shot cracked, echo bouncing, followed by silence again. Did it hit? Hard to tell, nothing moved. Then a new sound, comms hissing, frequencies shifting, voices bleeding through. Not their own, not friendly. Words broken, scrambled, but trained ears caught tone, professional chatter, coordinated, calm. They weren't fighting ghosts, they were fighting mirrors. Her pulse thundered. The rookie whimpered, breath rattling, "It hurts." Foster's voice tight, "Stay awake, look at me, stay awake, damn it." She wanted to look, but she couldn't drag her eyes from the glass. She couldn't afford distraction. That was what they wanted, to split focus, to weaken edges. The memory rose again, unwelcome, her brother's last letter. Don't be the one left alive just to tell the story. She clenched her teeth. No, she wouldn't be left, she wouldn't tell their story, she would rewrite it. Another muzzle flash, east this time, a third shooter. Her blood went cold. 3 confirmed, she snapped. Parker swore hard, voice shaking. "We're boxed." Thompson's command voice thundered, forcing control. "Push forward, suppress north and east. Move now." Machine guns ripped. The desert exploded in echo, sand fountains bursting. The team crawled, stumbled, dragged Morrison through hell's open palm. She covered left flank, her rifle scanning, waiting for that perfect betrayal of light. She found its scope glint just for a breath. She fired. This time her bullet bit. A silhouette flinched, tumbled, rolled. Her chest caught fire. Relief, regret, triumph blurred with guilt. She ended a life, maybe one that had once sworn the same oath she had. American, trained like her. No time for mourning. Another muzzle flash answered. Bullets chewed the sand inches from Foster's arm. He pressed low, shielding Morrison with his own body. She whispered to herself, so soft it barely reached her lips, "Not again, not again." But the desert was merciless. Every meter to extraction was a gauntlet, and they were still outnumbered, still hunted, still bleeding. Her heart pounded with the knowledge. The trap wasn't closing, it was already closed. And they were inside it. How many shooters did it take to make a battlefield feel like a coffin? The answer hung in the air as the team scrambled forward, the desert erupting with invisible fire. One shot tore sand beside her cheek, hot grains stinging skin. Another cracked high, forcing Parker to slam his body behind a useless ridge barely wider than his shoulders. Suppression from 3 angles. No clean line to fight back. She stayed prone, every muscle taut, scope sweeping arcs too wide, too fast. She forced herself to slow, to breathe, to fall back into rhythm. Patience, precision. Snipers didn't panic, but her hands trembled anyway. Not fear, memory. The same way her hands had trembled the night her brother never came home. Morrison gasped, voice a rasp through blood. Why us? No one answered, because the truth was worse than silence. There was no reason that made sense yet. The team was crawling across ground designed to kill them. Suppressive fire from Garcia and Parker spat defiance, machine guns chewing the horizon, but the enemy didn't break. They didn't even flinch. They didn't need to. Patience favored them. Rodriguez cursed under his breath, adjusting scope, scanning high. He fired. Dust lifted from a ridge, but no body fell. A whisper of movement, nothing more. They're shifting, she muttered. Not holding, cycling positions. That was professional, that was doctrine. Never stay where the muzzle flash betrays you. Fire, move, fire again. She steadied, scanned east, a flicker. A shadow too crisp against fatting sun, she fired. Her bullet found stone, shards sparking, miss again. The desert mocked her. Her stomach turned. A sniper missing wasn't failure, it was exposure. Every wasted round told the enemy where she was. Every misfire painted her in their glass. Williams dragged Morrison harder, his body near breaking. The rookie's eyes rolled back, lips pale. Foster's hands pressed deep, blood smearing his arms. The medic's voice cracked but didn't stop. Stay awake. Stay with me, damn you. She wanted to scream at the boy too, but her voice locked. Instead, she whispered a prayer she didn't believe in, the kind her mother used to say when the house was still whole, before war shattered it. Garcia's voice came, strained. We're low on ammo if we keep spraying blind. Parker snapped back, better low than dead. His gun roared again, defiance drowning fear. Thompson signaled split arcs, bounding advance. It was madness in open desert, but staying meant waiting for another bullet. His leadership was steel wrapped in scars. He didn't hesitate, even when choices were suicide dressed as strategy. They moved, 10 meters at a time. Suppress, shift, suppress again. The desert swallowed sound, carried echoes far. Each burst of gunfire sounded like thunder crashing in a tomb. She covered their movement, scope scanning, trigger ready. Her breaths came in broken rhythms. One inhale, one exhale, squeeze. But the desert gave her nothing but ghosts. And then movement, not one, two, figures adjusting on separate ridges. She almost smiled through the grit, finally. Her fingers squeezed, rifle barking. One shadow fell back. Rodriguez's shot followed a heartbeat later, another target crumpling. Relief surged, but it didn't last. Because another shot came from the opposite flank, a fourth shooter. Her chest hollowed. The trap was bigger than she'd feared. Rodriguez whispered what everyone thought but no one wanted to hear. This isn't one team. This is a unit, organized, coordinated. Her stomach clenched. Organized meant funded. Coordinated meant trained. The truth dug deeper. These weren't just rogues. They were disciplined, and disciplined usually meant sanctioned. The question stabbed her. Sanctioned by who? Morrison coughed blood again. I don't want to die here. His words dragged her back years, to a hospital cot, her brother whispering the same thing through fever. He hadn't made it. His war had ended in silence. She carried him every time she lifted this rifle. Every time she pulled a trigger, she heard his voice. And now, this boy was repeating his last words. Her throat burned. She whispered back, more to herself than him, "You won't." But the desert didn't care about promises. They reached another shallow ridge, barely a breath of cover. She pressed her body flat, scanning. The sun dipped lower, light shifting to amber. Shadows stretched long, bending into jagged knives across the sand, perfect camouflage for rifles. Chen muttered as he wrestled with his gear, face pale. They're jamming us selectively, military grade. They know how to shut us out. Her pulse stumbled. Military grade, American doctrine, the kind of interference she'd been trained to run herself. The ghosts she carried weren't just memory anymore. They were flesh and blood, lying in wait. She forced her eye back to the scope. She couldn't let the past paralyze her. The team needed her focus. A glint, a reflection near a wash. She steadied, exhaled, squeezed. The figure collapsed. Her chest thudded hard. The recoil shook more than her rifle. She had killed before in other lands against enemies who spoke different tongues, but this was different. The silhouette wore patterns too familiar. The way he fell was too practiced. American. Her vision blurred for a second. She blinked hard, forcing it clear. She whispered inside her skull, "Don't think, don't feel, just survive." Rodriguez muttered, "You got one, good, but there's more, too many." Parker's machine gun thundered again. Garcia's voice strained with curses. Williams shouted as he stumbled, dragging Morrison's limp weight. Chaos spun, but the desert stayed cruelly calm. She thought of all the training briefings, the sterile rooms where they drilled scenarios against foreign enemies. Never once had they warned them about this, the possibility of fighting their own. And yet deep down she had always known it was possible. Betrayal didn't wear a uniform. It wore silence, secrecy, hidden orders. The desert roared again with fire. Bullets struck stone, sending shards slicing. One grazed past her, tearing fabric, burning skin. She bit back a cry, kept her cheek pressed to the stock. Pain didn't matter. Not yet. Thompson barked, "Final push, extraction in sight." She lifted her eyes for a second. Orange panels shimmered far ahead, a flat stretch marking salvation. It looked like heaven painted on sand, but it was hell's bait, wide open, no cover, and surely covered by rifles. Her gut twisted. Extraction wasn't safety, it was the final kill zone. She locked eyes with Thompson. No words passed, but he saw it in her look. He knew too. And still he signaled forward, because there was no other choice. The team surged, bullets cracked, sand erupted. Morrison moaned. Foster screamed his name. Parker's gun burned hot, Garcia roaring defiance beside him. Williams stumbled but didn't let go. She stayed behind, sight locked, her job to cover them. Her job to hold death at bay. Her fingers squeezed again and again. Each shot was a vow, not one more, not like before. But inside her, a question whispered louder than the rifle's bark. If the enemy was your own, how far would you go to protect the people beside you? And no answer came. Only the desert, patient and merciless, waiting to see if dignity would speak or act. How close could salvation look before you realized it was just another trap? The orange panels marking extraction glowed in the distance, shimmering in the falling light like a cruel mirage. Less than half a kilometer, close enough to taste hope, close enough to feel the helicopters that should come. Yet every man and woman in the formation knew the truth. Crossing that ground would mean opening their bodies to the barrels hidden in dunes and stone. The rookie moaned, his head lolling against Foster's arm. "So close," he whispered, voice small, childlike. I can see it." Her throat closed. She wanted to tell him yes, that they would carry him into the belly of the bird, that he would feel the weight of metal under him and hear rotors drown out fear. But promises didn't mean survival. Promises were lies wrapped in kindness, and she had made enough of those in her life already. "Keep him alive," she told Foster instead, voice low, clipped. Orders were easier than comfort. Parker laid down another thunder of suppression, Garcia's gun joining in harmony. Bullets swept the ridges, sending echoes across the desert, but the enemy's reply was patient, measured. Single shots cracking from different directions, each one a reminder that precision was more dangerous than volume. She hugged the earth, cheek to stock, her eye burning from the glass pressed against it. The desert swam in copper light, shadows carving angles sharper than blades. She swept her scope right, left, holding breath, waiting. A flicker stone shifting unnaturally. She squeezed. A shot tore through sand. A figure flinched back, crawling deeper into cover. Not a kill, but pressure. Her stomach twisted. She could feel it, the discipline of the shooter. He wasn't rattled. He wasn't rushing. He was waiting for the right angle, the right moment, the one step they couldn't take back. Rodriguez's voice snapped through. They've got overlapping fields, perfect setup. She swallowed. This isn't training, this is execution. No one argued. The silence said enough. Thompson signaled forward. The extraction point was still their only option. Staying meant dying slow. Moving meant gambling everything on speed, fire, and luck. On me, Thompson barked, his body leading, his rifle cutting arcs of fire. They surged. She stayed low, covering, her scope dancing across ridges. Her finger stroked the trigger twice. 2 shots. One near miss, one strike that sent a man tumbling from concealment. Her chest tightened. American gear, American boots. There was no denying it anymore. She wanted to scream, to demand why, to ask what could twist men like that, turn them against their own. But the desert answered with silence, and the silence felt heavier than any truth. Williams stumbled, dragging Morrison's half-limp body, grunting with effort. The boy's youth had turned to steel under fire, his eyes wide but unbroken. She felt something like pride, bitter and fragile. Then a crack split the air. A bullet smashed Chen's radio into pieces, sparks and fragments flying from his hands. He cursed, clutching the useless metal. Their last link gone, isolation complete. She exhaled hard. The enemy wasn't just killing them. They were cutting off hope piece by piece, bleeding morale as surely as blood. Parker roared over comms, his machine gun vomiting fire. "Come on, you bastards, show your faces." His voice carried rage, but beneath it she heard fear. Fear sharpened into fury. Fury sharpened into survival. Garcia joined, both guns sweeping in arcs that tore sand into fountains. The desert howled with return fire. Bullets chipped stone, spat dust, sang past ears. She focused, scope steady, searching for that one betrayal of light. And then there, a muzzle flash in shadow, she squeezed. Her round punched clean. A figure collapsed, gear spilling. She blinked, her chest hollow. Another brother-in-arms lost to betrayal. Her gut twisted. She had always believed the battlefield divided clean, us and them, right and wrong. But tonight, under this burning sky, there was no line, just mirrors, just reflections. Rodriguez's voice broke her spiral. "Good shot, keep pressure, don't think, just shoot." But she couldn't not think. Every trigger pull was a weight pressing her ribs, squeezing her lungs. Every silhouette she ended might have once stood where she was standing now, swearing the same oaths, wearing the same flag. The rookie moaned again, voice breaking. "It's cold." Cold in a desert still burning 100 degrees. She knew what it meant. His blood was running too fast, leaving his body hollow. "Stay with me, damn it." Foster snapped, his voice raw, his hands red. Her chest tightened. She wanted to crawl to the boy, to hold his hand, to anchor him in something human. But her rifle rooted her down. This was her place, behind the glass between life and death. If she left that, they would all fall. Thompson pushed ahead, his silhouette broad, fearless, commanding. He raised his hand, signal for final push. 50 meters of open ground ahead. No cover, no mercy. Her heart pounded. 50 meters might as well be 50 miles. The enemy was waiting, rifles already trained. "Suppression on my mark," Thompson barked. "Then we move." Garcia and Parker shifted positions, barrels ready. Rodriguez's voice was low, steady. "I've got overwatch." She whispered, almost without meaning to, "We won't all make it." Rodriguez heard. He answered without pause. "Then make sure the ones who do carry something worth living for." Her throat closed. It was the kind of truth that didn't comfort, but it was the only truth war gave. "Mark," Thompson roared. The desert exploded. Parker and Garcia's guns screamed, the air torn apart by thunder. She fired, Rodriguez fired, bullets cutting arcs across ridges. Figures ducked, rifles flashed, shadows shifted. "Move, move, move." The team surged into the open, dragging Morrison, hauling weight heavier than flesh. Thompson led, bullets whistling past his head. Foster covered the rookie's body with his own. Williams ran bent, teeth clenched, eyes wild. Chen stumbled, his gear shredded. She fired again, keeping heads down, forcing enemies to blink, each round a shield for the ones crossing open hell. Her rifle clicked empty, her breath caught, reload, fingers fumbled, magazine slammed, bolt pulled, back in the fight. But in that second of pause, a shot rang. Chen staggered, blood spraying from his shoulder. He fell hard, clutching the wound. His scream cut through the chaos. "Man down!" Her chest burned. She wanted to crawl out, drag him back, but movement meant death. She forced herself flat, scope finding the muzzle flash that had taken him. She fired, hit. Another figure fell silent. No satisfaction came, only a deeper ache. The team crawled, scrambled, stumbled closer to extraction. 50 meters became 30. 30 became 20. Her hands shook harder now. Sweat blurred her eyes, grit stung raw skin. She whispered again to herself, to the desert, to anyone who would listen. Not again. Please, not again. But the desert didn't answer. The desert never answered. How many steps could separate life from death? Sometimes only 20. The final stretch of open ground yawned before them, flat and merciless. The orange panels marking extraction flapped faintly in the dry wind, a cruel beacon promising safety it couldn't give. No cover, no concealment, just a killing field. Thompson didn't hesitate. He raised his fist high, then chopped it forward. Move. His silhouette was sharp in the copper light, the kind of image soldiers remembered forever, leader at the edge of impossible choices. The team surged. Parker's machine gun roared, a waterfall of fire sweeping left. Garcia echoed him on the right, both barrels screaming, brass shells spilling across sand. Thunder rolled. For every bullet they fired, the enemy answered with one perfectly aimed round, precision cutting through chaos. She pressed flat, sight up, her heart a hammer. Her scope danced from ridge to ridge, hunting for flashes. She fired once, twice, each shot snapping the silence in her bones. One figure fell back, another melted into stone, but there were too many. The rookie groaned as Foster dragged him across open ground. His eyes fluttered, lips pale, voice a whisper. "It's so cold." Her chest broke a little at those words. She'd heard them before. She'd heard her brother breathe them in his last minutes, skin clammy, blood leaving him. And now the boy was speaking with his voice. "Stay awake," Foster barked, half pleading. His hands pressed, his body bent over the rookie like a shield. William stumbled beside them, dragging gear, his face streaked with sweat and dust. Too young for this, yet already too old. His mouth moved in silent prayer, eyes wild with focus. A shot cracked. Chen screamed. His body spun, hit in the leg, dropping him to the sand. His hands clutched at nothing. His radio was already gone. Now his body was failing too. "Cover him," Thompson bellowed. She swept her scope, heart racing. Their far ridge, muzzle flash barely visible, she exhaled, squeezed. Her bullet split the light, struck. A shadow fell. Rodriguez's voice cut through. "One down, keep pushing." But for every one they dropped, another angle lit. Another shot snapped close. The desert wasn't empty. It was alive with rifles, with men trained as they were trained, killing as they had been taught to kill. Her stomach turned. Each target wasn't just an enemy. Each one was a mirror. Same training, same doctrine, same silence before the trigger broke. And she wondered, had any of them once sat in briefing rooms with her? Had she crossed paths with one in some forgotten base? Laughed at the same crude jokes, shared the same bitter coffee? The thought threatened to break her. She shoved it down. War didn't leave room for mourning the enemy, not if you wanted to live. Thompson's voice was thunder. 30 meters, push. The team staggered forward, dragging Morrison, half-hauling Chen, bodies bent under fire. Parker and Garcia's guns spat non-stop, barrels glowing, belts running low. She covered her rifle, her world. One shot, another. Each one a shield thrown over her people, each one a piece of herself gone. Then movement, sharp, too close. Her scope snapped to it, a figure rising behind stone, rifle poised, not far, not 800, closer, 200, too close for comfort. Her breath hitched, she saw his face for a blink. Young, hard, American gear, American eyes. She fired. The figure dropped. Her rifle kicked, her chest hollowed, and she whispered inside, "I'm sorry." Because in his face, just for that heartbeat, she had seen her brother. 20 meters, Thompson roared. The extraction point loomed, close enough to crawl. Helicopters should have been in the air. They should have heard the whine of rotors, felt wind tear at their hair. But the sky stayed silent. No birds, no rescue. It hit her then. Maybe there were no helicopters. Maybe this was always meant to be their grave. The thought nearly froze her. But Morrison groaned again and Foster's voice cracked. "I'm losing him." That anchored her. No time for despair, only action. 10 meters. The team staggered into the perimeter, diving behind the pathetic scrap of cover the panels offered. Foster dropped with Morrison, hands flying, blood everywhere. Chen crawled, teeth clenched, dragging his broken leg. Williams collapsed beside him, rifle clutched like a lifeline. Parker and Garcia planted themselves on either side, machine guns braced, sweeping arcs. Brass spilled like water. Their roars blended with the mechanical thunder of their weapons. Rodriguez slid into position, scope steady, voice calm despite the storm. "Eyes high, I've got angles." And she fell beside them, rifle heavy in her arms, heart heavier in her chest. Her hands trembled as she reloaded, breath jagged, throat burning with dust and grief. Because she knew what came next. The kill zone wasn't a mistake, it was design. The enemy fire erupted, concentrated, merciless. Multiple muzzles lit across ridges. Bullets rained into the extraction point, tearing sand, shredding panels, ripping air. The team pressed flat, returning fire, shouting, cursing, praying. She sighted one target, fired, hit. Another flash, another round, another death. Her rifle cracked again, her world shrinking to glass and crosshairs. But it wasn't enough. Parker screamed as a round tore across his side. He didn't fall. He roared louder, his gun still spitting. Garcia leaned harder into his own, face twisted, eyes wild. Williams scrambled to reload, his hands shaking. Boy turned into soldier in the space of minutes. Foster's voice broke. "I can't stop it, he's slipping." Morrison's breaths were shallow, ragged, eyes glassy. Her chest ached so hard it felt like breaking. She had promised him, she had promised herself. Not again, not another boy lost. She snapped her scope to the ridge, scanning for the shooter who had fired at Foster's patient. She found him, she fired. The man fell. But even as he dropped, another muzzle lit. A shot screamed past her head, close enough to sting her cheek with its passage. She gasped, pressing flat. Her heart thundered. They were surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned. Their only edge was will, and will bled fast under fire. She forced herself to breathe. She forced herself to whisper, "You don't break now, not now." Rodriguez's voice cut sharp. "They're trained like us. Every move, every tactic, whoever they are, they know our book." Her gut clenched, because they were written in the same book. Silence answered, agreement unspoken. And in that silence, she realized the true test wasn't whether they lived or died here. The test was whether they still believed in what they were fighting for when the enemy wore their own skin. Another crack, another bullet, another scream. And the desert held its breath, waiting to see who dignity would belong to, the living or the dead. How much more could one heart carry before it split in two? The kill zone burned with chaos. Sand erupted with every round, panels shredded into ribbons, the ground painted with fire. The desert was no longer silence. It was a roar, guns screaming, men shouting, blood falling. She pressed her cheek to the rifle, eyes raw from glass, hands slick with sweat. Every breath was jagged, every shot a prayer. One enemy silhouette dropped. Another muzzle flash winked out, but still more replaced them. A swarm, not wild, not careless, disciplined, professional, the kind of fire she had once been proud to be part of. Parker roared through the din, machine gun blazing. His side bled freely, his uniform dark, but he didn't fall. He screamed louder, drowning pain with defiance. His gun spat arcs so wide it sounded like thunder rolling across stone. Garcia bent over his weapon like a man welded to it, face twisted, sweat pouring. His frame shook with every burst, but his fire never faltered. Together, the two of them poured defiance into the ridges, carving seconds of survival for the rest. Williams crouched beside Foster, firing in short, desperate bursts while still dragging Morrison's limp weight closer to cover. The boy's face was set, teeth clenched, eyes terrified but unbroken. He wasn't a trainee anymore. He was a soldier born in fire. Chen crawled with his wounded leg, dragging himself across blood-stained sand, teeth gritted, breath hissing. He clutched his pistol like it was the only tether to life left. Thompson stayed at the center, his rifle barking, his voice commanding through the chaos. Hold the line, eyes open, fight smart. And she aimed, fired, aimed again. Her rifle was an extension of her soul now, every squeeze of the trigger a heartbeat, every recoil a vow. She whispered with each shot, not him, not her, not today. But the desert was merciless. Another crack. Foster screamed. His body jerked back, blood spilling from his shoulder. His hands tore away from Morrison for only a moment, but it was enough. The rookie's body convulsed, blood surging, his breath rattling into silence. "No," Williams screamed, voice cracking. His hands grabbed at the boy's chest, shaking, begging, "Stay with me, please." But Morrison's eyes were already glass. Her chest collapsed inside her. It was happening again. Another brother, another promise broken. She had sworn, not on my watch, but the desert didn't honor oaths. Her vision blurred, tears cutting streaks through dust and grit. She forced herself back to the scope. She found the muzzle that had ended him. She fired. Her round hit clean. The man fell. It didn't bring relief, only rage. Rage that burned hotter than the desert sun, hotter than grief, hotter than fear. Rage that steadied her hand, sharpened her sight. "You bastards," she whispered, voice trembling. "You don't get to take another." Rodriguez's voice came through, low and flat. "Keep your head, girl." But he didn't have to tell her. She wasn't breaking. She was something harder now. Another muzzle flashed. She snapped, fired. Drop, another, drop. Each shot carried her fury. Each one was a piece of her grief turned into steel. But no matter how many she cut down, the ridges still burned with fire. For every enemy she felled, another rose. Garcia grunted, his gun falling silent. Jam. He cursed, working frantic. Parker swung wider to cover, but in that heartbeat a bullet tore across his chest. He staggered, fell to one knee, gun spitting wild. She shifted, sighted, fired. The shooter dropped, but Parker was bleeding heavy now, his breath shallow, his body slumping. Garcia roared, slamming his weapon back into action. The ground shook with his fire, his voice echoing with rage. Williams dragged Morrison's still body back, refusing to let go, refusing to accept. His eyes were wild, his voice broken. "We don't leave him, we don't leave him." Her throat closed. She wanted to tell him it was too late, that the boy was gone, but she couldn't, because she had once whispered the same words over her brother's body, refusing to leave, refusing to let go. So she didn't tell him. She let him carry his ghost. Thompson's voice cut sharp, the kind of command that came from a place beyond pain. "Last stand, hold this ground." And she realized this was it. They weren't surviving because of numbers or tactics or firepower. They were surviving because of will, because no one here would allow themselves to be erased quietly. Her hand steadied, her breath slowed. She swept her scope across ridges lit with death. She pulled again and again. Each shot a promise, each shot a scream. The desert wind rose, carrying sand like knives, slicing their skin. The world shrank to grit and blood and fire. And then movement, too close. She snapped her scope and saw him. Enemy sniper, less than 200 meters, crawling low, rifle aimed straight at Thompson's back. Her heart seized. She swung, finger pressed. But the shot wasn't clean. Angle wrong, wind hard. The margin was razor-thin. She exhaled, whispered to herself, for them. Her rifle cracked. The man's body snapped back, his rifle falling silent. Thompson turned, eyes meeting hers across chaos. No words, just the shared truth. She had saved him. Her chest tightened. She had chosen, and in that choice, something inside her steadied. This was why she carried the ghosts, not to bury her, but to remind her. Parker's roar faltered, his gun falling silent. His body sagged, his eyes dimming. Garcia shouted his name, voice breaking, fire pouring. She wanted to run to him, to hold him, to tell him he had given them time, but there was no time. Rodriguez's voice cut again hard. Focus, they're pulling back. Her eyes widened. He was right, the fire was thinning, not gone, not defeated, but shifting, retreat. The enemy had taken losses too, enough to break their momentum, enough to decide the trap wasn't worth bleeding out for. Her body sagged in sudden exhaustion. Her rifle dropped to the sand, her arms shaking. The desert quieted, only the moans of the wounded and the sobs of the living filling the air. She looked at Morrison's body, still blood soaked into sand. She looked at Parker, silent now, his gun still warm in his hands. She looked at Chen, clutching his ruined leg, Foster pressing his shoulder wound, Garcia staring at nothing, his face hollow. Williams bent over Morrison, rocking, whispering prayers. Her throat closed. They had survived, but the desert had taken its price. And she knew deep down the true battle wasn't over, because the enemy hadn't been foreign. They had been mirrors, brothers, shadows of themselves. The question that had haunted her since the first shot came back, sharper now than ever. If the enemy is your own, what does survival mean? She didn't know, not yet, but she knew this. Sometimes dignity didn't speak, it acted. And tonight, dignity had acted through every bullet, every scream, every ounce of will left in their bones. When the desert finally went quiet, it felt wrong. No gunfire, no cracks of rifles, no shouting voices, only the whisper of wind across dunes, carrying with it the stench of blood and gunpowder. For a moment she thought she'd gone deaf, the silence so heavy it pressed against her skin. But then she heard the moans of the wounded, the broken gasps of men still alive, the sobs someone tried to smother into their sleeve. Survival wasn't victory. It was something smaller, something heavier. She lowered her rifle. The barrel smoked faintly, the heat shimmering above steel. Her cheek felt bruised from hours pressed against the stock. Her hands shook now that they were free of the trigger, the adrenaline draining, leaving only weight. Rodriguez moved first. He stood slowly, body stiff, his scope still scanning the ridges. But the ridges stayed still. Whoever had hunted them was gone, or far enough that pursuit no longer mattered. His eyes looked older than the desert itself when he lowered the rifle. Thompson limped into the center, his vest shredded, dust caked in sweat across his face. His jaw was tight, but his voice carried like iron. Check in. Names were called, Foster wounded but alive, Chen bleeding, leg ruined, Williams shaken but standing, Garcia silent but present, Rodriguez steady as ever. Parker's name was spoken into silence, Morrison, too. She swallowed hard, her throat raw. Their bodies lay side by side in the sand, one young, one seasoned, both stilled in a place that would erase them if the wind was allowed enough time. She wanted to move, to cover them, to keep the desert from swallowing them whole. But her legs wouldn't work. Not yet. Williams refused to let go of Morrison. The boy's arms were locked tight around the rookie's limp frame, his face streaked with dirt and tears. He's not gone. He can't be. Her chest ached. She knew that feeling. She had lived it. She had clung to her brother's body until they pulled her away. She wanted to tell Williams that letting go didn't mean forgetting. That grief would become part of him, a scar invisible but permanent. But her voice failed. She couldn't steal his denial yet. Denial was sometimes the only shield left. The extraction zone was a ruin of shredded panels and scarred sand. Yet the coordinates had been right. And right on time, the distant whump of rotors finally broke the silence. Helicopters, cutting across sky now bruised with sunset. Relief should have flooded her. Instead, suspicion hollowed her stomach. Why now? Why not sooner? Had they been waiting for the fight to play out? Or had someone higher decided extraction was worth more when the team was already broken? The birds landed in clouds of dust. Figures spilled out, uniforms, gear, weapons ready. American, their allies, their brothers. And still, she didn't lower her guard. Thompson barked orders, moving wounded toward the waiting crew. Foster half-carried Chen. Garcia hauled Parker's body with a face made of stone. Williams stumbled behind with Morrison still clutched in his arms, refusing to release him until forced. She stayed back, rifle in hand, scanning, watching, because she couldn't shake it, the sense that the desert wasn't done with them yet. That somewhere out there, scopes still glinted. One of the extraction soldiers stepped toward her, shouting above the rotors, "We've got you, get aboard." Her eye caught his patch, unit insignia, familiar, too familiar. Her stomach turned. The same insignia she had seen on the enemy gear she had dropped with her own bullets. Her hand tightened on the rifle. For one breath she nearly raised it, nearly screamed. But the moment passed. The man turned, waving the others forward. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe he wasn't one of them. Maybe. The desert loved maybes. She boarded last. Her boots hit metal, the vibration of the rotors trembling through her bones. She dropped into a seat, rifle across her lap, eyes locked on the horizon even as it fell away beneath them. Bodies lay at her feet. Parker, Morrison, shrouded now, but she still saw their faces. Still heard Morrison's whisper, "I don't want to die here." Still heard Parker's roar, "Come on, you bastards." Her hands trembled as she wiped grit from her face. The tears carved fresh streaks. She didn't hide them, not anymore. Rodriguez sat across from her, his eyes sharp, watching. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. He had seen the same things she had. He knew what the gear meant, what the tactics proved. He knew their enemy hadn't been foreign. And he knew the truth wouldn't be written in any report. Thompson sat beside her, head bent, blood drying down his neck. His hand pressed against his thigh where shrapnel had torn flesh. He didn't look at her, but his voice carried low, barely audible over the rotors. "You saved me back there." She shook her head. "No, I just did my job." His eyes flicked toward her. "No, you chose." Her chest tightened, because he was right. She had chosen, not just to pull the trigger but to carry the weight that came with it. The helicopter banked, the desert stretching endless below, the sun bleeding into horizon. From up here the battlefield looked small, scars already half erased by wind. No sign of the fight that had nearly ended them. Soon, only bones would tell the story, and even those would fade. But memory wouldn't, not for them. She leaned her head back, closing her eyes. She let the weight wash over her. Faces of the dead, voices of the living, questions with no answers. Who had ordered this? Why had brothers become enemies? Would anyone ever tell them the truth? She doubted it. But she also knew something else. Survival wasn't about truth. Not always. Sometimes it was just about carrying the weight forward, making sure it didn't vanish. When they landed, debriefs would come. Questions asked, answers avoided. Files locked away under classifications too heavy for daylight. She would sit in a sterile room, recount the bullets, the distances, the way Morrison bled out in her arms without ever calling her by name. And they would write it down, nod, close the folder, move on. But she wouldn't. She would carry the rookie's voice, Parker's roar, Foster's broken hands, Chen's scream, Williams' denial, Garcia's rage, Rodriguez's silence, Thompson's weight. And somewhere inside her, she would carry her brother too. The boy who had whispered the same words Morrison had years ago, before she had chosen this life. The ghosts weren't burdens anymore. They were the proof she was still human, proof that every bullet meant something, proof that dignity wasn't about medals or reports or who lived to tell it. It was about what you carried. As the helicopter cut across the dying sky, she whispered words no one else could hear. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And in the silence that followed, the desert below seemed to whisper back, not in words, but in wind, carrying away the blood and screams, leaving only memory in those strong enough to bear it.